Greetings and welcome to a preamble just before the video that you're expecting to watch when you clicked on this. This month, Andy and I have reached a grand old age of 50 episodes, 50 months recording the watching brief. How do you feel about that, Andy?
I feel it's about time we grew up.
It's
If we're that old, we need to grow up.
it's certainly an opportunity to make some changes. And one of the things that we're wanting to do is shift from a monthly format that then we break up into smaller pieces once a month to something which is a bit more fleet of foot, something which is a weekly release, a shorter release, and a release that allows us to focus on different aspects of what we were already covering in the watching brief. I mean, Andy, you had some thoughts on the different segments we might do.
Well, the thing that I've got most interest in, obviously, is the news aspect, and I think going to a weekly rather than a monthly format means that we can be more news driven,
Mm.
and actually probably respond to more news stories than we would do in a normal monthly watching brief. We could cover more stories, probably in a shorter format, but it means we can pack more in, basically.
Well, pack more in, but also, I suppose, respond in a more timely fashion. So instead of waiting
Yes,
3 weeks to talk about something that's come up in the news, we can actually tackle
exactly.
it in that week. We
Yeah.
also want to chop and change some of this stuff, so it won't always be a weekly release. This is news driven. Some of it may be opinion driven, editorials. Some of it may well be inviting other people in for hot takes. For example, we've long been threatening to get Mr. Tristan Boyle on to talk about museums with Andy, and I'm looking forward to seeing that um, meeting of minds, shall we say? And also, we're separating out the media picks as well. We sort of hinted at that last month, but we want to be able to give that segment, maybe have that segment be slightly longer, actually make it an hour as opposed to half an hour perhaps, but a situation where we can engage with our love of media and the arts and archaeology in a way that allows it to breathe and is explicitly opinion and analysis driven. So hopefully it should mean more variety in a more timely fashion and in a way which encourages you guys to directly get involved in the conversation. So if you wanted to cover something in a given week or in the following week, you can send us an email and we will be able to get onto that in that following week. Um, Keep an eye on us. I say it's been 50 episodes, and hopefully there'll be at least 50 more months to go. And enjoy the coming video. Cheers. Moving on to a much more light-hearted segment, but actually fundamentally still connected to the question of accessibility to original material. Um,
You think it's light-hearted. Wait till we get to the bits the links that are further down our notes.
oh, that's a good
That's not
point.
quite so light-hearted. It's a bit more
No, no.
serious. But hey,
Yeah, sorry. Our watcher yet again has to put up with us making serious points. Let's begin with, at the very least, a very lovely
yeah,
story. It's been
it is a lovely story.
connected to the recent release of the movie The Dig on Netflix, and this is the Lego version of Sutton Hoo Treasure. Has been deemed to be amazing by the BBC. A father and daughter who built a Lego replica of a helmet found at Sutton Hoo have been told that their creation could go on display at the historical site. Personally, I wouldn't want my Lego being in a museum. I would much rather have it in the house, but nonetheless. Andrew Webb, 45, and his daughter Matilda, 11, from Essex, have spent the lockdown making the likeness of the Anglo-Saxon treasure, King Raedwald's helmet, that was discovered in Suffolk in 1939. And Josh Ward from the National Trust has said it's an absolutely fantastic creation. It'd be absolutely wonderful to display it next to one of our replica helmets because the original is in the British Museum in London. He said the helmet was uncovered during the excavation of a ship and is
Sussex police are investigating. Yeah, go on.
thought to belong.
Suffolk police are investigating. Yeah.
It's thought to belong, as I say, to King Raedwald. And again, they make the connection there to the movie The Dig. But what's interesting here for me as a fan of Lego is that it's been submitted to the Lego Ideas website, where people can submit their own Lego creations, and if it gets enough upvotes, Lego will have a look at it. Maybe they'll modify it a little bit, but they'll release a version of it as an official Lego set. And this one is doing okay. It's not gone through the roof. 831 supporters, with over a year left to gain some publicity, which is quite good. Um, but an element here that you might find interesting, Andy, just to be a bit naughty, is that along with the Lego recreation of the helmet, they're suggesting three figures be produced to go with it. Often they'll have a sort of smaller scale of complementary artifacts to go with a Lego model of this sort. And in this instance, these three figures are not your replica of Andy Brockman. Was that made by your kids? I seem to recall.
It was. Yes, it marks my appearance as the Harry Hill TV expert of the week.
Well, actually, I
The
think
proudest moment in my entire career.
very. I think. Oh, actually, I have up here. This is a Lego figure that was customized by someone, and it was back in the day when the character of Gin Jenna Bones would appear on Archaeosoup sometimes. Hang on, it's
Yeah.
a bit blurry there. There we go. That's a bit better. Um,
Yeah.
so I'll just show him to the camera that you can see, Andy. There we go. But
Yeah.
he's got his gin glass. He's got a map. And even the map has on it the location of gin. So there's that sort of thing. Um, but actually, just going off on a true diversion there. My favourite Lego-based thing in the building, in the room, sorry, is actually uh, this. It is a
When did you last dust in your office?
Lego Celtic Batman.
Oh,
I'll just sort of show that to the camera here. Hang on,
actually, I think
if it can
I
focus.
should be controversial here and make the observation that I think that it's entirely appropriate that the idea of the Celt should be juxtaposed with the idea of the another fantasy figure, Batman. But that's another thing.
Wow, you're doing my work for me, Andy. Well done. You do listen. But anyway, so the point is, there are three Lego figures attached to this suggested set. One of them being a representation of Basil Brown, local archaeologist who found the helmet.
Is that Basil Brown with lemon drizzle cake?
Lego drizzle cake. The lemon drizzle cake that
Yes.
may well be anachronistic. Apparently, um,
Yeah.
there's King Raedwald himself, a fairly generic piece, essentially based on Lego's medieval range, and Edith Pretty. I like her bob haircut, very sort of period appropriate, or she has a magnifying glass and a finds bag there. But no one else. And I suspect that it does say here not final designs to their credit, but I suspect some people may have something to say about that, given how The Dig was received for its portrayal of, for example, going back to a previous segment this month,
I think it should
female
include Peggy Pigott.
archaeologists. Exactly, Peggy Piggott, at the very least, should be involved. Perhaps Stuart as well. Um, Anyway, it's a cool little thing, and what the reason why we hinted here that there's a serious side to this story is that it really highlights that archaeology and archaeological artifacts are absolutely at their best when they're accessible, when they are viewable, when they are able to inspire people to create, in this case, for example, their own engagement with the piece by making a Lego set. And so we've paired this. You might say it's slightly tangential, but I think it holds up. And there's the connection to
Go, keep digging, keep digging, keep digging.
um, there's a connection to, for example, there's the BBC News article this month. Police warn students to avoid the science website. That is essentially it's a Russian site that's made an awful lot of research freely available. That otherwise would be behind paywalls on academic journals. There's another link that you've added to this part of the agenda, Andy, from the Guardian, and it's the long read. So this is the opposite of a TLDR, um, and it is the staggeringly profitable business of scientific publishing bad for science, and it raises very important questions because on the one hand, accessibility sparks creativity, accessibility in the realm of academia, sparks new and better and improved ideas. And there are questions about, just as there are questions about, for example, whether or not the British Museum should have everything in it, as opposed to different regions maybe that are having access to this stuff at different times. Then again, as you said, they have a sharing program, don't they? Material is being shared. Um, just as there's an issue there, there's also an issue with academic publishing and the way in which it limits public access to published ideas, but also it limits academic access to these things. I definitely, well, when I was a student, I couldn't afford access to all this stuff, and I hear a great many, even learned readers at universities, doctors and professors, often having to bum around for a PDF or two of an article because
Yeah,
they can't afford to pay for the
yeah,
subscription. Um,
yeah,
but I mean, yeah, in that sense, it is a bit of a monopoly, isn't it?
yeah,
And it's a bit of an issue when clearly open access and accessibility can be so creatively um, fruitful.
yeah. Look, I mean, if we're going to talk about academic publishing, it's one of my favourite subjects.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I always start with we always like killer facts. My killer fact with academic publishing is that modern academic publishing in the UK was effectively started by somebody called Robert Maxwell.
Mm,
Google Robert Maxwell, Daily Mirror, Robert Maxwell, pension fund scandal, etc. You'll find about it. Basically one of the biggest crooks in British business history, certainly since the war and possibly ever.
yeah,
Um, who
yeah.
basically bought up a whole load of academic journals after the war when they were going cheap in Europe and created the basically effectively modern academic publishing models.
Mm,
Um, Yesterday, again, I picked up an article talking about, in this case, ebooks
mm,
and academic ebooks in particular, which was pointing out that you now have university courses where you've got the full resources of a university library with budgets to provide academic literature for the students for the reading lists,
mm,
telling its staff, telling their staff to rejig their course reading lists, not to take the most relevant papers, but to take the ones that the university can afford.
yeah, yeah.
Now, when that is happening, academic publishing is cutting its own throat. Thing is, they're too stupid and too greedy to realise that that mo- this platform we're using now has basically cut the ground from under them.
Mm,
Mainstream media is discovering that too, and it's finding ways of carrying on and monetizing to cover costs while not being able to coin it in the way that they might have done once when you had mass dead tree media.
mm,
Even the mass market tabloids are losing copies and market share to online and to online only resources.
mm,
The article I was reading, admittedly, it was pushing open access,
mm-hmm.
but it was pointing out that, for example, if you're an academic author and writing a book or a monograph, whatever, you don't need a traditional publisher anymore.
No.
You can, if you're not peer review separate, we'll come to that in a minute, but if you're not doing something that's peer reviewed, like a research paper,
Mm,
but if you're simply publishing your research, as you might do in a book or a monograph, then you can do that yourself, and you can publish online or you can publish to print to order,
mm-hmm.
and you can charge a reasonable amount of money, and then people might actually be able to use your work and your research, which I think is meant to be the point.
It is meant to be the point. It's also interesting how, in that sense, if not implicit, certainly, often explicit, is the relationship between academic publishing and career progress. This is
Yeah.
particularly big, I think, in the US, the notion of citations, the number of times that you've been
Yes.
cited in other people's work,
Metrics. Your
metrics,
metrics. Are your metrics up to speed? Yeah.
which sort of hangs its hat on this business model and forces
Mm,
people to engage with it, and it leads to
exactly.
very strange situations whereby even I, for example, have been approached. I'm sure you have, to publish, for example, I don't know, my dissertation or something in a book,
Yeah.
uh, but they'll ask initially. They'll just go, would you like that?" And yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, go on then. Why not? They'll say, "Okay, well, it'll cost you £300." So
Yeah.
they want me to pay to publish my ideas so that they
Yeah.
can profit from it. It's ridiculous. And it's mainly because they think I need it to be
Yeah.
published in order to further my own
Yeah.
career. It's
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, and it also doesn't necessarily lead to the best outcomes. For example,
Yeah.
um, uh, your Jordan Petersons of this world, people who have very
Yeah.
particular specialisms, um, may well write a piece of research which is controversial, or even other people have written research which is actually just bad research, but it's
Mm.
cited a lot because it's an example of either bad research or controversial research, or research which they're stepping outside the bounds of. Um, and it's cited a lot because people are saying, don't do what this person does. I'm not necessarily talking about Jordan Peterson in this instance, um,
No.
but nonetheless, that academic
Other
that
fringe opinions and other fringe and controversial opinions are
are
available.
available, but that person who maybe said the moon's made of cheese can say their
Mm.
metrics are amazing because they've been cited 3,000 times. As someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. So
Yeah.
it's a strange model, and I think it all comes back to this simple notion of uh, of the simple fact that when people access ideas and can access what stuff looks like, for example, and can engage with notions, out of that will come better ideas, better academia, better writing, and in this instance, better Lego models as well.
Yeah.
It's as simple as
Yeah.
that.
Mm. And to bring us full circle, we're talking about models and so on. Better to have a Lego model, and preferably from material that hopefully is on open access, than be a crime scene.
Yes, yes. Do you know, at some point, I really want. I did reach out to. I've forgotten what her name is now. The person who broke that story about Fredo
Mm.
and looting, and
Yeah.
we're going to do an interview, and it kind of fell through. But maybe we could get her on for one of the new Watching Brief hot takes. That could be
I would love. I
could be
think that
fun.
would be great. That would be
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely.